after the surgery. I think this is a real phenomenon, that the sensory improvement is real, and I've seen enough of the patients to know that it probably is lasting. I've seen several patients that were 2, 3, 4 years after, and they still have that sensory improvement. I think the motor improvement has been extremely modest. Now, he's published this several times in Chinese journals. I must say he's tried many times to publish it in the U.S. journals, and nobody will publish his work. I am a little disappointed in this because I think his presentations have been, though they're not ideal, I think the information is still useful to some extent. One of the things in U.S. journals is that they absolutely refuse to publish things that they think may be a little bit questionable. And I think we need to deal with this because there's a lot of interesting, useful information that are coming out overseas that just are not being shown in the U.S. Okay, he has now done over 700 patients. A lot of people have criticized him for doing so many patients without really doing a controlled trial. And I'll talk about the regulatory environment later because it's actually quite relevant to this. But what a lot of people don't know is that at least 3 other hospitals have replicated his results. One is the Beijing Army General Hospital. They did 30 patients. One is the Sun Yat-sen Memorial Hospital in Guangzhou. They've done 64 patients. And then the Xi'an Jiaotong Hospital recently picked this up, and they've done, at least when I was there last year, they'd already done 10 patients, and they report almost the same results. Sensory improvement, moderate, modest motor improvement. And these are on unmatched fetal olfactory and sheathing glial cells. By the way, we've now looked at these cells, and what we find is that the way he's growing them is that about 50% of the cells are actually probably astrocytes, GFAP positive, and 50% of the cells are olfactory and sheathing glial cells. The olfactory and sheathing glial cells from human are very different from rats. They are more P75 positive, and we've actually done a study of human olfactory bulb and the olfactory and sheathing glial cells in those cells. And these are just fragments of cells, of tissue that he has left over that he's not using in his tissues. Okay, so let me go on. The Kunming Army General Hospital has done about 180 patients with fetal Schwann cells. By the way, I didn't even know that there was such a thing as fetal Schwann cells. If you had asked me, do fetuses have Schwann cells, I would say I really don't know. Anyway, they would pinch the peripheral nerves from first or second trimester fetuses, and they would dissociate them, grow them on collagen, and the way they transplanted the cells is really, I think, quite interesting. They were doing a lateral myelotomy on the patients and washing the inside of the injury site out, just like in their decompression study. And then they would put ethicon, catgut suture from ethicon. You know, this is a biodegradable suture. They would put that into the culture, and the cells will grow on top of the suture. So they would have all these fetal Schwann cell covered sutures. And when they open up the spinal cord from the side, it opens right into the injury site. They would open right between the dorsal root entry zone and the lateral column. It's a beautiful entry. You just go in and you split and you look right into the central part of the spinal cord, and you don't damage any of the dorsal column or lateral column. You have an opening there. They stuff the fibers in right in the middle, and they then take the whole collagen, fetal Schwann cell coated collagen, and they lift it off. They take the cell side facing the spinal cord, and they put it right on, tuck it in, close the dura, close. They can do this procedure in less than 2 hours. And they did hundreds of these cases. Anyway, I was not convinced that I went there in 2004, and I was not convinced that this treatment was really making all the patients walk. However, I saw 5 or 6 patients that really did walk. I must tell you, very unusual. In my time looking at patients, I have never until that time seen a patient convert from Asia A to D. I've seen lots of patients convert to Asia A to C. You know, for example, Christopher Reeve is an A to C. Not useful movement. So they did an analysis of all the patients that they did these transplants, and it turns out that all of them were done early, within the first 2, 3, 4 weeks after injury. So they were going to publish a paper saying that fetal Schwann cells are beneficial to spinal cord injury when transplanted within the first month or so after injury. I then asked them, I said, how do you know this is not from the surgery? So starting last year, what they did was they did 30 consecutive patients who came in with Asia A, and they did this whole procedure, but they didn't put in the cells. Okay? And that was the study that I'm referring to in terms of the intramedullary decompression study. And that was the study that they found 54% of the patients walking. So this is a very interesting thing. This is just developing. All this data is now pouring out, and it's something to think about. There's one place, very interesting, Tianjin University Hospital, and Naomi, you should be very interested in this because this is Schwann cells. There's this man, Feng Xijing, who had gone and done a PhD thesis down in Adelaide with Rob Rush, and very good place. And he was at Flinders, and at that time he had this idea that he would tie off a sural nerve of a rat. At the same time he injured the spinal cord, and then go back a week later, harvest that distal part of the sural nerve, which was filled with degenerated fibers and probably Schwann cell precursor cells. He minced it up and he transplanted that into the spinal cord, and he saw all these rats get better. He's still in the process of publishing that, but as soon as he got back to China, in Tianjin, he did 10 patients using this method. So he would go in and tie the sural nerve, wait a week, harvest it, and then minced it up and transplant it into the spinal cord. And he claims that the patients are getting better. So he's now trying to replicate this, and this is an interesting therapeutic approach that is actually quite feasible. Okay, many other therapies that are quite unusual. I won't spend much time on this, except there's a Zhang Xiaochen in the Shanghai Hospital has done over 4,000 cases bridging peripheral nerve from above the injury site to peripheral nerve below the injury site. Dr. Zhao from Tongji University has now done hundreds of patients where he has transferred from a lumbar root to a ventral root to the bladder, and I've seen the effects of this. It's really truly amazing. He's getting patients with 3-foot urine streams by scratching the dermatome of the lumbar root that he's transferred. Now he's done this not only in China, but he's done about 30 of these patients at NYU. And he's now taught a number of groups in Detroit and Philadelphia to do this procedure. It's a below the injury site transfer of nerves. Now there's one group that I've recently come out very strongly against. This is a group called Baker Biotechnology. They've been transplanting CD34 plus cells into patients, and these are non-HLA matched cells, and they're giving it either intravenously or intrathecally. They're doing as many as 2 patients with spinal cord injury per day, and they're charging them $22,000 to $30,000 per patient, and they're advising them to, if it doesn't work the first time, to do it a second time and a third time. So many of these patients are paying up to $80,000, $90,000, $100,000. And they have just website blogs on how the patients are improving. There's just no science involved, no examination of the patients, and I've been very critical of this group. A lot of problems in China, but the problems are not as great as some people think. And the first is that evidence-based medicine is still being accepted or coming into China for the very first time.